Welcome back to the Algarve. So, for regular viewers to the channel, this is my new bike. The bike I ordered 4 months ago as a replacement for the trusty Trident, which I enjoyed immensely, but which just had one or two tiny niggles that I'm hoping this 2022 Speed Twin will remedy. Now, I came in for a bit of stick from some of you getting rid of a bike I'd heaped so much praise on, and yes, if Triumph hadn't launched this revised Speed Twin, I would almost certainly have kept the Trident. It's undoubtedly the best bike I've ever sold. So anyway, here's the new bike at last. Was it worth the wait? Is it worth the considerable price premium over the Trident? Is it a better choice than the identically priced Bonneville T120 I tested the other week? Let's find out. So I don't expect this has come as a massive surprise. Many of you guessed right as I put out ever more obvious clues and teasers while waiting for delivery. You know I like Triumphs and you know I like torque. I rode the first generation Speed Twin a few times and really liked it. Lots and lots of torque, quality fit and finish, and a timeless wolf in sheep's clothing elegance that appealed to me. And indeed, I did come very close to putting a deposit down on more than one occasion, but there was just something slightly underwhelming visually for me about the first generation, especially given the price. The forks and rear shocks in particular looked a bit basic, and while the brakes were okay, they lacked the bite of more expensive Brembo setups like the Stylemas or the M50s the bike has now been given. Then, while I was umming and ahhing last year, and out of nowhere sprang the Trident, and I thought, this looks good, it's half the price, bit of a no-brainer. And so I ordered one last December and took delivery back in February this year. I really liked it, but then at the end of June, Triumph launched the new 2022 Speed Twin, which appeared to fix most, if not all, the points that had made me hesitate a year earlier. New upside-down forks, M50 Brembos on the front, squeezing bigger discs, brushed aluminium finish exhaust, rendering the old Vance & Hines redundant, the same meaty torque, available 500 revs per minute lower, sportier Metzeler Racetech RR tyres, a handful of minor aesthetic changes like nicer wheels, more blacked-out engine parts, and the more premium top yoke nut from the Thruxton. And I think the result that Triumph have achieved is a sportier, cleaner, dare I say, more modern look. It's the bike it always should have been, or at least the Speed Twin I always wanted. Now, some may say it's lost some of its retro charm, that the gated forks suited the modern classic look better, and I get that, but I don't care. I personally love the sleeper vibes the new model gives off, and I can't wait to give that new front end a good spanking. Now, I guess the first thing you've noticed is that I went with the matte grey version. Yes, a nightmare to keep clean, and the choice of a high-vis yellow stripe under the logo is questionable on a classic bike because it's a bit fashionable at the moment. The other alternatives for the 2022 model are the red, which we've all seen in the press launches and promotional photos, and a gloss black. Now, I'm a bit tired of red, having had it in some shape or other on my last 3 or 4 bikes, and the black simply wasn't available. So rather than wait another 4 months, I thought I'd better take what I could get. So can I tell the difference between this and the 2019 model? Well, perhaps a little surprisingly, yes, I can. Obviously, it's a brand new bike. More importantly, it's my bike, and so I can't give it the beans yet, but the front suspension definitely feels more planted, more expensive, and the brakes are phenomenal. There is a very slight dip in mid-range torque, thank you Euro 5, but it's not a deal breaker because there's just so much torque anyway. The whole bike feels phenomenal, to be honest, though I suspect this might also have something to do with the fact that since I sold my Trident, I've been riding around everywhere on my 9 horsepower Honda Grom, whose every component, while perfectly functional, has the feedback and quality of a cardboard egg box. I thought the 17% reduction in engine inertia was just Hinkley marketing blurb, but the engine does seem to want to spin up more eagerly than the old model. Apparently this has been obtained by using a new lightweight crankshaft and alternator, and it does seem to have worked. I can't vouch for it being 17%, could only be 16%, I don't know, but it definitely feels keener, lighter and sportier than the old model. There's plenty of power for use on the sort of roads I frequent. 112 Newton meters of torque at just 4,250 revs per minute is a very healthy figure. And availability doesn't seem any different really to the T120 I rode recently. The Speed Twin is definitely faster, especially at higher speeds, and the sportier tyres and smaller front wheel mean it's generally far nimbler than the Bonneville. Then there's the exhaust notes. Triumph really had to put in a lot of thought into getting the bike to comply with Euro 5 regulations, while somehow hanging on to the classic sound and the classy looks. And here again, they appear to have pulled it off. The 2022 has an exhaust note that falls somewhere between the stock pipe and the Vance & Hines option on the old bike, which is spot on for me. I personally don't really enjoy excessive noise, and in terms of loudness, it's right on the limit of bearable, and I certainly won't be attempting to remove the baffle or swapping for an aftermarket pipe. LED lights? Well, this confused me while I was researching the new model. In the press kit, Triumph state that the bike has LED lighting with DRL headlights, and this has cropped up in a few online reviews and print reviews too. Well, I can confirm here and now that while the four indicators, rear light and front DRL might indeed be LED, the all-important headlight is still good old halogen. It's a simple modification though, and I already have the appropriate LED bulb lined up in the garage. The beam pattern probably won't be up to much, as the headlight parabola has been designed for incandescence. But for me, who rarely if ever rides at night, this is less of an issue than being seen by other road users, and I always think the higher temperature of LED lights is better in this respect. As far as I know, Triumph haven't changed the seat design at all. It's comfortable enough, but the longest ride I've done so far has been about 90 minutes, so it's a bit early to be conclusive. It's no worse than on other bikes I've owned, with the possible exception of the pillow-like seat on the Monkey. The riding position hasn't changed, of course, and is still excellent, at least for the top half of my body, although if anything it's a sportier position than on the Trident. At 6'2", 1m87 m, I do find my legs are slightly cramped, but no more than they are on many other bikes this side of full-size adventure bikes. And again, it's a relatively easy fix. Tech Bike Parts do lowering kits for the pegs, and there's plenty of ground clearance if I do want to drop them by half an inch or so. Ever-present torque means that acceleration is relentless. It's not brutal, but it's not far off, and it's delivered at what seems like any speed and in any gear. And in this respect, it's more akin to the Rocket than the Trident. Looking to overtake at 70 miles an hour, 120 kilometers per hour, no problem. Just twist the throttle and you're off. And you'll be at 90 miles an hour, 140 kilometers an hour within a couple of seconds, and you won't even have needed to drop a gear. Just keep her in top and let the torque do the work for you. This isn't the fastest bike I've ridden, but it's the bike I ride the fastest because it's just so easy. The suspension feels firm but expensive and reassuring. And I totally lucked out with the Metzeler Racetech tyres, perfectly suited to the ever-warm asphalt we get down here. Not quite so sure about the UK, especially in the damp winters, but certainly perfect in sunny Portugal. Now, I've had the bike a few days, and I've been riding around trying to imagine which car this would be, if it were a car, not a bike, because I used to be quite into cars until they became so expensive. The Speed Twin sounds and feels about as close as I've come on a motorbike to riding a V8, and in this respect it reminds me of the BMW E39 M5 I dreamed of owning when they came out 20 odd years ago. As I said, it's not the fastest bike ever. There are plenty of 200 horsepower monsters competing for that title nowadays, but it monsters traffic like the E39 M5 used to. I took the bike for a run up the IC1, which is a road that runs north-south between the Algarve and Lisbon, a more picturesque alternative to the A2 motorway. This is the Speed Twin's natural hunting ground, and where I felt its full potential for the first time. The potential to accelerate is there all the time. Where the Trident or the T120 would begin to run out of steam above about 70 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, the Speed Twin just keeps going and going, at least at more or less legal speeds. During the running in period, of course, I'm supposed to take it easy, 4,000 revs per minute for the first 300 miles. But unlike most bikes, this really isn't a problem. 4,000 revs per minute equates to 120 kilometers an hour or 75 miles an hour, and 4,500 is 140 kilometers an hour or 90 miles an hour, so it's really no big deal. I remember when I was running in the Trident, I hit this same 4,000 revs per minute limit at just 80 kilometers an hour or 50 miles an hour, which could be seriously buttock clenching when you have lorries wanting to overtake. So 4,000 revs per minute is fine, to be honest, and I'll probably rarely go much above it even when the bike's been properly run in. You just ride the wave of torque, and that suits my style perfectly. Now, as you've probably noticed, I've carried out quite a few modifications already, but I'll make these the subject of the next video. This is just a first impressions. So, any negatives before I wrap this one up? Well, I went to collect the Speed Twin in my van because the skies on delivery day looked a bit ominous, and I had to use the bike's engine to get it up the loading ramp. With a Trident, I could push it up using my admittedly ever-diminishing muscular force, but you can definitely feel the extra 20 kilos over the Trident, at least when manoeuvring. The second negative would probably be the clocks. Yes, they do look very nice, although I'll probably be swapping the dials for a more sober alternative. But the secondary information given in the small LCD screens, fuel range, gear indicator, riding mode, etc., is far less easy to read than it is on the Trident's exemplary display. There's also the fueling. Now, I think I need more time on the Speed Twin to assess this properly, but at lower speeds around town it can be a little jerky, a little snatchy. I ride most of the time in sport mode, which doesn't help of course, and I've ordered some throttle spacers from the US to see if that will help smooth things out a bit. But anyway, this is an issue I'd rather give my conclusive thoughts on in a couple of weeks when I've had more time to experiment. Other than that, I have to say it's a very positive first impression. Fabulous beefy engine that matches my riding style like no other bike I've owned. I'm almost tempted to say it's a mini Triumph Rocket. Almost as much power, or usable power, a lot less heavy. Excellent grip from the suspension tyre combination, and of course prodigious braking from the M50s. So far it's everything I'd hoped for. Stick around for upcoming reviews on all the mods I've been doing and more in-depth riding impressions, and as always, thanks for watching.